Good day, everyone. We are the Group 5, and tonight we will be discussing about the individual to the society and society to the individual. We live in a world where change is inevitable, where on one side of the world a butterfly flaps its wings, and on the other, a huge tornado has been created. Man is one pure subject of change. A lot that has happened over the century was caused by man in society. Is change good or is it bad? I guess that it depends on a person whose ideologies can be bent by society. But how does it affect us? The impact of the society. Well, society has its way of impact on the character of a person. It has rules or laws, and so occasionally taboos that have the ability to shape one's behaviors and his or her actions. These are the reasons why some people's opinions are easy to manipulate as they want their ideas to meet society's demand. There might be some who oppose these laws as it affects their way of living, as it makes it hard for them. They might even extend to wage rallies and sometimes war against the society they are living in. This, this was more evident in the past, specifically during the 19th century, as our country was influenced by the Spanish, Chinese, and lastly, the Americans. During that time, we were oppressed by these countries for their own self-gain, and this was the reason why some Filipinos started a revolution. And one of those people who lead the revolution is Dr. Jose Rizal. As the ascendance of the Chinese mestizo and the issue with the friar land affected by Dr. Rizal's character, as he stood up not only for independence, but also for the equal treatment of his fellow men. Now let's move on to the sociological perspective. We have three categories. First is the functionalism. Functionalism refers to the society wherein the system of interconnected parts that work together. Consensus theory, as it is characterized by the idea that society requires shared norms and values in order for it to function properly. Institutions in society such as the family, education, and the media have clear social functions, which ensures that there is a broad consensus about the norms and values of the society, which enable organic and orderly social change. The conflict theory is a society wherein it is composed of different groups and interests competing for power and resources. It is a socio-political theory that originated with Karl Marx. Karl Marx is the one who originated the conflict theory. It seeks to explain political and economic events in terms of an ongoing struggle over finite resources. In this struggle, Marx emphasizes the antagonistic relationship between social classes, in particular, the relationship between the owners of the capital, who Marx calls the bourgeoisie, and the working class, which he calls the proletariat or the common people. The third sociological perspective is the symbolic interactionism. Symbolic interactionism refers to the human behavior which is influenced by definitions and meanings that are created and maintained through symbolic interactions with others. Symbolic interactionism is also It focuses on how individuals use signs or symbols to create shared meaning between themselves and others. And during the time of Rizal, in terms of courtship, Rizal was said to have sent Leonor private and secret love letters, which he wrote using invisible ink made with water and salt. He was adept in chemistry, and he was adept in chemistry too. To read the letters, Orang had to hit the letter over a candle or a lamp.
In Das Kapital, Marx proposes that society is composed of two main classes, the capitalists and the working class. The capitalists are the business owners who organize the process of production and who own the means of production, such as factories, tools, and raw materials, and who are also entitled to any and all profits. The other one is the working class. They do not own any or have any claim to the means of production, the finished products they work on, or any of the profits generated from sales of those productions. Rather, they only work in return for a money wage. So you can see here the pyramid of capitalist system. So the symbolism and meaning of this political pyramid is basically representing the American capitalist system. So the pyramid has 6 levels to it. So each representing levels of control and power. So in order for us to understand the full meaning of this pyramid, we need to break it down into each level. So you can see here that we work for all, we feed all. So the very bottom level represents the working class. They are the ones supporting the pyramid. So without them, um, the whole thing couldn't exist. They are reaching for the money at the top, but the upper levels will never allow them to make their way up. You can see here that we eat for you. So this level represents the rich class. They only enjoy the fruit of the bottom level's labor. They all live with luxury and do not have to worry about supporting the pyramid. As you can see, they have better clothes, better clothes and appear to be having a much better time. Next, you can see here that we shoot at you. This level of the pyramid represents law enforcement or military. They enforce policies and rules that help the bottom half stay separated from the top. If anyone disobeys the system, the officers will do what they have in order to keep the offender from changing it. Next, we fool you. This level contains priests representing religion and church. They are the ones that keep the people believing that the system is okay. The bottom half keeps faith in God, hoping one day to end up to the top. So the top half has faith in God to keep those at the bottom from replacing their spot. We rule you. This level represents the elite. They are the executives and royalty. This level makes sure the pyramid stays the way it is. So they made and continue to utilize the system. They have no need for money. They can control everything. So they they drop just a little money here and there to keep the workers at the bottom from quitting and letting the pyramid collapse. So at the very top, you can see um, a giant sack of money. So this is what the whole system relies on. Keeps the rich richer and the poor poorer. So why do they insist on having the system this way? Well, if everyone was financially comfortable, they would barely be an incentive to work and keep the system together. So that is the whole meaning of the symbolism of the pyramid of the capitalist system.
Now, let us look at the Philippines during the 19th century from its political aspects. So, during the 19th century, there were intermittent civil wars in Spain, which caused them to lose most of its colonies in South America. So, this created a struggle between the liberals and the conservative intellectuals of the nation. And the Spain experienced political instabilities during this time which greatly affected the Philippines. For example, constant replacing of governors in the Philippines resulted in constant changing of policies and increasing unfinished projects. Also, there was a rampant graft and corruption. This can be observed as officials were not be able to provide for the people's basic needs, like public works and services, and also failures to provide peace and other for its people. Additionally, taxes were not fully utilized, and lastly, limited participation of the Filipinos in the governments. So all of this happening are the reasons why Filipinos in the 19th century developed a sense of nationalism. So out of this propaganda movement, magazine, poetry, and pamphleteering flourished. Here comes the movement most brilliant figures, Dr. Jose Rizal, who produced the two political novels, and that are the Noli Me Tangere and El Filibusterismo. So the rampant corruption of the government and their lack of concerns towards the people of the Philippines are the reason why Dr. Jose Rizal called for the response in the government. Religion. Hierarchy of the Catholic Church. So hierarchy is strictly means the holy ordering of the church or the body of Christ. So they respect the diversity of gifts and ministries. So at the bottom, naatay, laity or the people, which is the member of the laity belong to the same religion and reap the same benefits through living a life of faith and devotion as do members of the clergy. And the second one is deacons or deaconess. These are the ordained minister of the Catholic Church. The priest. A priest is a baptized man who has received the sacrament of holy orders. Bishops. Bishops are the ministers who hold the full sacrament of holy orders. And the archbishops are they oversee large areas of church called archdiocese. Cardinals. Leading bishop and members of the College of Cardinals. And the last one is Pope. Pope is the leader of the Catholic Church. Since the colonial period, Catholicism has been the cornerstone of Filipino identity for millions in the Philippines. During the early years of Spanish colonialism, in part due to a lack of otherwise centralized religious institution other than Islam in the South, which might have challenged it. Its close association with Filipino identity have placed the Catholic Church at the heart of nationalism, social justice, and other movements, while at the same time has been associated with power, elitism, and exploitation at various points in its history. So Catholicism and the Spanish state were inseparable, and the religious played a predominant role in the administration of the Philippines. So as a result, they were deeply implicated in the exploitation of Filipinos. Religious order including the religious orders including the Augustinians, Dominicians, and Recollect held the largest tracts of land. Haciendas and encomiendas granted by the Spanish government, rented plots of tenant farmers. They were also responsible for the religious education and spiritual well-being of their tenants, and some friars championed the enters of these parishes against the exploitation committed by their orders and secular leaders.
The 19th century. Many scholars consider the 19th century as an era of profound change in the Philippines. During this very period, vast economic, political, and cultural currents were felt. In the 19th century, many scholars believe that the Philippines saw significant changes during this century. There is a huge flaw in the economy, politics, and culture. But how? That is why my co-reporters explain how economy improve and grow. For political and social and cultural has changes during the 19th century. The Mexican of War Independence. By 1810, the Mexican of War independence rattled the Spanish Empire, which led to the loss of their precious Latin America colonies and also affect the Philippines and eventual closing the Royal Philippines Company, but opened Manila to the world trade by 1834. By the 19th century, many Mexicans wanted to separate from Spain and create a sovereign government that would act on behalf of their own interests, much like movement for American independence from British rule in the late 18th century. The desire for independence from Spanish rule first formally emerged in the 1810s. Due to the fight between Mexican and Spanish, the Philippines became free from the colonies of the Latin America, and because of that, it has affected the Philippines, and it is the reason why the Royal Philippine Company closes and they open a world trade that helps Philippines to improve, grow faster, provide higher income, and more opportunities to the people.
Opening of the world trade. The opening of the Manila to the world trade resulted to foreign merchants and traders to act as the agricultural cash like crops. They exported the oriental economy through their major investors from the British to America. So it was um, opening in 1855, I guess, based on my research. One of the reason why they um, open their world trade is because they want to um, differentiate the differences of technology, the differences resources that the country have, the demand, the economies of scales, and the other thing. So they open it by the Spaniards, and they have looked for the investors that is that are have the power or willingness. So next slide. So by the half year of the 19th century, the majority of the export of the Philippines came from cash crops. So from our country, we all know that we are um, what is this millionaire of the resources materials. We have the power or many minerals in our country, and we are going to trade our goods like tobacco, sugar, cotton, indigo, abaca, and coffee. So as the province shifted to cultivating cash crops, land ownership and management became the problem. So the small land owners, farmers felt the pressure while the hacienders grabbed the opportunity. So, okay, um, like example of China. So China, their product is going to trade in our country and to transfer or barter for the goods. So an example of that is um, what is this? Tobacco. So tobacco is originally from the Philippines, and they exported or they trade it from the other country so that it will be um, what is this? Kanang mahalin. So it will be more to say that the more productivity, more uh, power or to grow the economy. So this shows that um, the owners of the land, or call it from farmers, they are they do hard working. They going grab the opportunity um, to yeah, to tanom, to magtanom para uh, maka-income og daghan. So they even though they are what is this, farmer or ano, mga level nga kuan, but they have the opportunity um, to grow our economy. So they are not just a farmer, but they are the source of our goods. So we don't have to estimate their capabilities in doing that. So we're so grateful enough for the farmers to give us the goods that we have. So I think that's it. So thank you.
Okay, so let's move on to politics. So, familiar naman dyan tatanan sa ano na sa politics. But first, let me define what politics is. Politics is the process by which those who lives in groups decides things. It is the process of establishing agreements between individuals so that they may coexist in social unit such as tribes, cities, or nations. So, the Spanish colonialism began with the arrival of Miguel Lopez de Legazpi's expedition on February 13, 1565 from Mexico. He established the first permanent settlement in Cebu. Itong na-defeat si Magellan. So, the government, which Spain established in the Philippines, was centralized in structure and national in scope, which is composed of national government and local governments that administered provinces, cities, towns, and municipalities. The barangays were consolidated into towns or pueblos, headed by the gobernadorcillo, or the little governor, which is also known as the capitan. Towns into provinces headed by the governor, or represented the governor general in the province. Next is the Spanish centralized system. So, mo ni siya ang katong pamaagi sa kuan Spaniards ng sistema sa panggobyerno. It is headed by the governor general, followed by the provincial official, headed by an alcalde mayor, the cabildos or the city's official, headed by the two alcaldes, the pueblos or the municipalities officials, headed by the gobernadorcillos, the barrios or the barangay officials, headed by the cabeza de barangay or the capitan.
Rizal is the son of prosperous landowner Francisco Ignacio Rizal Mercado y Alejandra II and Teodora Morales Alonso Relanda y Cuentos. So they were granted a list of hacienda and an accompanying rice farm. The Dominicans, unlike most of the kids in his age, Rizal had a will of childhood and school life. So that is the background of Jose Rizal. And at the age of 11, Rizal was exposed to the death of Gomborza, one of which is family friends of Rizal. So the death of Gomborza at the time was awakened strong feelings of anger or resentment among the Filipinos. So they were questioned Spanish authorities and demanded reforms. The Ilustrados led the Filipinos' quest for reforms because of their education and newly acquired wealth. So they felt more confident about voicing unpopular grievances. So the educational system is used to pacify the Filipinos and train them in Catholicism and to follow laws imposed by the Spaniards. So there is a law that students should be taught in Spanish. However, Spanish missionaries think that this may become a way to the Filipinos to oppose the Spanish administration and thus they were not taught Spanish. So, during the entire period of the Spanish rule, education was controlled by the Catholic Church. In the place of tribal tutors, Spanish friars and missionaries educated the natives through religion. Due to the philocracy, the friar controlled the religious and educational life of the Philippines, and later in 19th century, they came to acquire tremendous political power, influence, and riches. They could even send a patriotic Filipino to jail or to be exiled or executed as an enemy of God. Because of this, Rizal and some other reformists denounced the friars and the enemies of liberal reforms and modern progress in the Philippines. So, a notorious visible government exists in Spanish Philippines. So this government was called frailocracy, so meaning role of the friars. During the last decades of the 19th century, the Spanish friars were so influential and powerful that they practically ruled the Philippines. So the Pope gave the King of the Spain the power of patronato, real, the state and the church in the Philippines was unified. So those the colonial government appoints and pays the salaries of the archbishops and the parish priests, their reign supreme even in government matters.
Due to frailocracy, the friars controlled the religious and educational life of the Philippines, and later in the 19th century, they come to acquire tremendous political power, influences, and riches. They could even send a patriotic Filipino to jail or to be exiled or executed as an enemy of God. Because of this, Rizal and some other reformists denounced the friars as the enemies of liberal reforms and modern progress in the Philippines. Rizal became a leader of the reformist movement called Propaganda, contributing numerous articles to its newspaper, La Solidaridad, which is published in Barcelona. Rizal's political program included integration of the Philippines as a province of Spain, representation in the Cortes, the Spanish Parliament, the replacement of Spanish friars by Filipino priests, freedom of assembly and expression, and equality of Filipino and Spaniards before the law. Rizal returned to the Philippines in 1892 and founded a non-violent reform society, which is the La Liga Filipina, in Manila, and was deported to Dapitan. He remained in exile for the next 4 years. In 1896, the militant Katipunan revolted against Spain, which is led by Emilio Aguinaldo. Although he had no connections with that organization, but still he was arrested and tried for sedition by the military. Then, he was executed by the firing squad in Manila. So, in conclusion, in our daily interactions, every individual in the society contributes to the function and conflicts of economic, political, and religious life. Our culture shapes the way we work and play, and it makes a difference in how we view ourselves and others. It affects our values, what we consider right and wrong. This is how the society we live in influences our choices. But our choices can also influence others and ultimately help shape our society. In the 19th century, the Philippines dived deeper into the world trade, where Philippines exports tobacco, sugar, cotton, indigo, abaca, and coffee, became more inquisitive about religion and socialized with more foreigners. The Philippines, being part of the wider Spanish Empire, underwent changes when the Spanish crown also had a dynastic shift in the 18th century that gave birth to Bourbon reform that brought new policies and economic reorientation for the colonies, which paved the way to the opening of the Manila to the world trade. The development saw the emergence of mestizos and principalia classes that asserted their relevance to the society. Jose Rizal was a vocal, privileged Filipino male in the time of oppression who was later unjustly killed for his patriotism. His life should open this generation's eyes to the experiences of those who come from the different works of life when they are vocal about abuse. Thus, it is not surprising that men like Jose Rizal flourished in the 19th century, that grew up in a society in transitions, and by the time he matured, he could reap the benefits of the changes that were happening. As he was exposed to higher education, he would realize that as much as economic development was a reality, so was the rising of inequality and worsening conditions for the majority of the population.